Hi, Greg.
Hello, Hugh.
Welcome back for my full moon video.
It's that time again. Let's do it.
Yeah, this is the one we forgot to put up. John DeLorean was in my life.
Well, yeah, in a big way. You knew him
Yeah,
as a
he
as a
was
kid. He'd drive by and wave at you, and
he was my neighbor, and he made the GTO and the DeLorean Motor Company, and he used to drive past me every day and wave. Do you know what he drove past me in?
was before the DeLorean, so I don't know. What did he?
He built an electric car in his garage down the street from me.
Now I get the point of this video. You're going to talk about
He'd
Musk
drive
electric
past me
cars.
in an electric car every day when I was 14. He'd scare the heck out of me because he'd come up behind me. And not just me, he'd come up behind me and Debbie Knoll and Dennis Hall and Linda Hall. We'd be walking up to our school bus, number 53, my birthday. And I own the patent on the buses because of Buckminster Fuller, my family member. My grandmother was Mrs. Fuller. So I own the patents on the vans at General Motors, the Chevy van, own the patents on the milk trucks, and own the patents on all the buses on earth because of Buckminster Fuller. But all of that was stolen from me before I was 7 years old. Or I'm sorry, before I was 17 years old. And then they
when he would drive by and wave at you, this was what, 67 to 73?
No, it was even earlier than that. It was
Even
back
earlier?
when they murdered. It was back when they murdered Kennedy. It was 63, 62,
Okay.
61.
So you were
And
real young then.
yeah, I was walking to my school bus, and they had shipped me back to Oakland County from Macomb County just for 1 year, sixth grade in 63 when they murdered Kennedy. To put me under a teacher's desk who was naked. And she introduced me to Clint Walker as Ruby shot Oswald in the basement. And if you remember, Walker had been a general that supposedly Oswald was going to try to kill too, if you remember. They were walking Oswald to Walker.
Mhm.
That's what they were doing. He was going to go see Walker. But they don't mention that in the news today since they murdered my wife. All of that's been disappeared. And they murdered four of my wives. But DeLorean was my friend at General Motors. And I think he designed a GTO. And everybody wanted a GTO with a Hemi in it or a 455. My own brother had a GTO with a 455 Hemi in it. It would burn rubber for a mile, and all the Vietnam veterans liked owning them. It was the fastest car. It would beat a motorcycle, and the Chevelle would do the same with a 396 in it. And all the veterans, they'd come back from basic and they'd buy a GTO or a Chevelle. And then they'd race motorcycles down Woodward and beat them. And they thought that was so cool before they went to Vietnam. Guys, they like to race. And me, I knew the Woodward family, and that's the biggest street other than Gratiot. I knew Mr. Gratiot and Mr. Woodward. I grew up with them and John DeLorean. But John DeLorean, he made an electric car in his garage, and he would drive to General Motors every morning in it when I was a little kid. Sixth grade. I was maybe, I don't know, 10 or 11. And he'd come up behind me in his electric car and you couldn't hear him. It'd scare the heck out of us. And he'd drive past me and Debbie Knoll. Debbie Knoll married Butler, and Butler ran the CIA from Great Lakes Naval Hospital. And Butler and his wife were my friends all my life. I helped them bury their parents. And their parents died when they were very young. Um, I visited Michael and his wife at Great Lakes Naval Hospital when he was running the CIA as Navy Special Forces. And he did that all his life. He was a lifer in the Navy.
His name was all over the Air Force Museum there at Wright-Patterson too.
Yeah, I know.
Interestingly enough,
Jesse
yeah.
Ventura used to talk about Smedley Butler. The Butler family was my friend all my life. And the Butler family really ran the CIA from Chicago. That's why I knew people like Al Capone's family. They renamed him Rutledge and moved him to Michigan to my school with Butler. And then Butler joined the Navy, became Special Forces, and ran the CIA. When his wife, Debbie, who was my childhood friend in Sterling Heights, Michigan, when she died, he and I got together for a little bit just before Biden was elected, and he flew to Vietnam because I think he flew there because Kamala Harris was going there for a visit. And Kamala Harris isn't my Harris family.
Right.
The Harris family in the Smithsonian is not Kamala. Kamala Harris was a slave trading family, and my Harris family, we didn't own any slaves. We were President Lincoln's friend. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure can.
Well, back when
Loud and clear.
DeLorean built his electric car that he would zoom past me every day on the way to my school bus number 53 with a little bluebird on it that my family owned the patents for. And coincidentally, not coincidentally, but Butler's family owned Greyhound in Brighton, Michigan. And his name was Darga, Frank Darga. And I and Michael Butler used to go up to his Greyhound bus stops up in Brighton and Ypsilanti, Michigan. And we'd spend the summers there and scuba dive together. I have a history that's really famous. And John DeLorean's a part of that with his electric car that he would drive to General Motors every day. And years later, about when I was 24, so that'd be about 14 years later, I was going to marry a girl named Karen Kissel, who was from Missouri. And her family was the Maybelline cover girl. And my family owned Maybelline, I believe. Harris Publishing owned that magazine. And Johnny Cash was walking the line, and I was the bottom line. And then my second wife's family tried to murder me a couple times, so I divorced her. And my wife didn't try to murder me, her family did. I didn't find it reasonable for me to stay with people who were murdering my family members, people like Jimmy Hoffa. So I divorced her. And she didn't want the divorce. She stalked me for quite a few years. One day she jumped in between me and my new fiance, Karen Kissel, who was Ricky Nelson's cousin. I was stopped at a light. She saw us. She'd come running across the street, opened the door to my van and jumped in between us and told me she wanted to be my wife again. And I told her no. And she did that right in front of my new fiance after we'd been split up for a year. And my whole life is like that. Women who married me wanted me back all my life. Nancy Fredericks, whose father was Joe Jacobs of IBM. And that's another story we're going to go into in a minute. But I met Karen Kissel after I worked with my cousin Bill Gates' partner, Paul Allen. I worked with Paul Allen and Neil Cronin at Christensen Corporation with the chief of a big Indian tribe in America, and we put up the Guidestones, which were Mother Earth religion in a bunch of languages, 12 languages, I believe. Christensen did that. as we worked with the chief. And I and Neil Cronin, who designed the interface for Microsoft computers in his Royal Oak home after work, we would leave Christensen's and I'd go to his home in Royal Oak and talk to him about interfacing TV screens to DOS computers. And he actually did that and handed it to Gates. And Joe Jacobs was my first wife's family member who handed Gates that software, and Gates didn't know anything about electronics, and neither did Paul Allen at that time in my life. They probably do by now. When I was 16, 17 years old, working for Christensen and teaching electronics in Centerline in Warren, Michigan, Paul Allen and Bill Gates didn't know anything about electronics. I was the guy who knew about electronics, and I was teaching it in Warren Consolidated School System. So I would go with Neil Cronin to his home at night after we worked at Christensen, designing computerized robots for the auto companies, Chrysler and Ford, and Fisher Body and General Motors. We designed the bulkhead that goes on the end of every steering wheel on Earth, where all the computer connections hook up to. And Christensen, he owned the patent on the spring-loaded pins that go into that bulkhead and interface with the steering column bulkhead. And that's where Christensen got all his money to build the Guidestones. After I and Paul Allen and Neil Cronin worked together, I divorced Nancy. And then Christensen sold that corporation to Japan. And the Guidestones were made undercover because I'd been kidnapped on the day that Admiral Byrd was murdered. And I'm going to just mention here that I wholeheartedly believe that President Eisenhower murdered Admiral Byrd on the same day he had Osborne kidnap me. And I really believed that. And then he told the world that he was afraid of a military industrial complex as he murdered Admiral Byrd, kidnapped me, cut my father's hands off, and changed the history of the world, because the 5 governors that kidnapped me and murdered my twin had kidnapped us with Camille Sirhan that day. And Camille Sirhan, I don't even think she knows she was kidnapped, but she was put with my murdered twin in my kindergarten class for one day from California. And she was crying because she missed her mother and father. And then Mrs. Long and Mrs. Wallace handed me over to Osborne and Hall and Anderson and Andrews and Schultz. And they tortured and raped us, and they beat my twin to death and threw his body by Darrell Hall's home in Pennsylvania. And then Camille Sirhan, 20 years later, married one of my cousins. And I was at my cousin's wedding when they framed Sirhan for killing Bobby Kennedy about 11 years later, or 17 years later.
11 sounds right.
What's that?
11 sounds right.
Yeah, well, 11 years later, as I'm at Camille's wedding to my cousin, Mr. Squire, and it was a 7-day wedding. It wasn't a 1-day wedding. It lasted 7 days, and it was in Michigan, not where Bobby was killed. They framed Sirhan for killing Bobby during that wedding. And Camille and my cousin Sirhan, because I hugged her and told her I missed my father, my mother and father too, in kindergarten, while we were singing the Pledge of Allegiance and songs in front of a piano in kindergarten, they kicked me out of school and handed me to 5 pedophiles. Mrs. Long and Mrs. Wallace and Mrs. Schultz did that to me.
Yeah.
And they did that to me repeatedly. And they murdered my identical twin as he was put in my kindergarten class with me with Mrs. Sirhan, who was, and we were all 4 or 5 years old. And the world doesn't know this. Nobody's ever told the world. And my own cousin doesn't know that his wife was put in my kindergarten class with my identical twin. He doesn't know that. If he watches this video, he will know. And whether or not they'll corroborate that or not, I don't know. But I don't even really care because I don't lie to people. And you know that, Greg. Have I ever lied to you about anything?
Not a bit.
So that should be, I should be on the news all over the globe just because they kidnapped my twin and I with the Sirhan family 11 years before they framed him for murdering my cousin Bobby Kennedy. I'm related to all of them, even Jackie Bowe. Her family would come to all my performances as I played growing up in different clubs in Detroit area and Chicago. There's no lie in me, but L. Brooks Patterson, he was outside the house where they murdered my twin. And I come running out naked. I crawled through a window when they left me on chain because somebody knocked on a back door as 3 or 4 people were torturing us and raping me. They left me unchained and I crawled out a window and ran home on Hoover Street. And Al Brooks Patterson, he watched me do it and laughed about it instead of helping me.
Well, he's sitting in a squad car, right? Looking out the window
Yeah.
of his car.
Yeah. And then later I went to school with Al Brooks Patterson's family member. And I posted about this. And I told his family member that I was kidnapped in front of his dad. And I think he went and told his father that Friday night, and he was found hung in his father's jail cell that night.
Sounds like
when
L.
he-
Brooks Patterson's
when he
pretty
was
corrupt person.
his own family member, yeah. And that kid's mother was Mrs. Patterson. And I believe it was Al Brooks Patterson's nephew. And his name escapes me right now. I'm almost 70 years old now. And he went to school with me. And all he was guilty of is I told him the truth of Al Brooks Patterson. And then they killed him that night in Oakland County Jail. And I posted about it. People can go to my Facebook and find the post. Oh, his name was Oglesby and his mother was Mrs. Patterson. Teddy Oglesby. And his funeral was held in a different city in Oakland County. But he went to school with me at Warren High when I was teaching electronics at 14. And he was one of my friends at Warren High, and we used to hang out together. I had a paper out in Oakland County, and part of his family was part of my paper route with people like Bill LeVice, who's Mitch Ryder in Detroit Wills. And his bass player was my brother-in-law, Frank Nevelt in Royal Oak. And
Did you just say you delivered papers to Mitch Ryder?
yeah, every day for years. That's how I fed my family. And Mitch Ryder was actually my family.
Mhm.
His bass player married his sister married my brother, and they were writing the songs Elvis sang. So my own family, when I was a kid, was writing the songs Elvis sang in Vegas and in his movies. You know, songs like Good Golly, Miss Molly and Devil with a Blue Dress On. Elvis would sing those songs in Vegas. And Bill LeVice went to my school also, Warren High. And that's Mitch Ryder's real name, Bill Device. And I'm really Huey's Francis Squire. And we won the Battle of the Bands at Warren High. And they stole my name. And, you know, all of Hollywood was watching me because I had a band called Bottom Line. And they stole even my name, as they stole my trademark for Bottom Line. And everybody had a field day stealing my money. I owned the patents.
That's why Hubbard was trying to recruit you for Scientology.
Right. Yeah. L. Ron Hubbard tried to recruit me before he recruited John Travolta. And then that's why you got Epstein and Welcome Back Kotter, because Mary Pat Kotter was my girlfriend at that time at Warren High. Mary Pat Kotter, Kotter, and then you got Welcome Back Kotter with John Travolta from Scientology. And L. Ron Hubbard was holding Scientology meetings at Warren High prior to John Travolta, and he kept trying to recruit me, and I told him no. I didn't want to be a part of his church because I knew it was a farce.
Right.
So anyways, DeLorean, he made that electric car, and nobody else had one. And he was driving it into GM, working on the GTO and whatever else General Motors Tech Center had him working on every day. And then he decided to create his DeLorean motor car, the gull-wing car that was in Back to the Future. And he had actually designed that when I was a kid and knew him, and he was driving the GM in his electric car. I went to marry Kiki Nelson Kissel, whose family was on the cover of Maybelline magazine. She was the Maybelline cover girl for about 30 years. And 5 black guys chained her to a tree, kicked her teeth out, and brutally raped her. And then about a year later, my own brother raped that same girl in front of our children just before our wedding. So I never married her. But Nelson was selling drugs, and not Karen, her aunt, Nelson. And they were from Missouri and related to Ricky Nelson.
Through the pharmacy, right?
Yeah, she was a nurse, and she would steal the doctor's prescription pads and write prescriptions after she retired from the doctor's office. She'd make a phony visit, and she knew where he kept the pads, and she'd steal his prescription pads, and she'd write phony prescriptions to keep her house after Mr. Nelson, who owned a bowling alley in Port Huron, died. And she had a big house on a river, Clinton River Road, that her husband, who owned the bowling alleys, owned. And that was the only way she could afford to stay in it, was to sell drugs. And that's what she did. And I wasn't part of that, but I knew she was doing it via Karen. Karen told me about it. Karen Kissel. And when they murdered Karen, Mae Musk took over Maybelline cover.
Yeah, Elon's horrible looking mother. Yes.
Yeah, and Donald Trump's tax attorney sold me a 7-acre farm in Utica, Michigan that had an illegal Senate and CIA drug trade going on it. And a girl named Verna, her kids were overdosed in my driveway by a guy who was a pharmacist, where Nelson would send her forged prescriptions. Because when she was a nurse, she would write out the doctor's prescriptions for him and sign his name. So she just continued doing that after she retired to keep her house that she got from a man named Bill Nelson, who owned a bowling alley in Port Huron, Michigan. And all these people are dead now. So I'm not hurting anybody saying this. Karen's dead. Her daughter's dead. They murdered her daughter while I sat in L. Brooks Patterson's office 2 years ago with my brother's kid and my bass player's kid. All three kids were murdered as I sat in L. Brooks Patterson's office. And I had dinner with a guy I was publishing on 9/11 from Iraq, Ronnie Carmo. And they had sold Ronnie Carmo a restaurant on Olson Street as they murdered my wife, Terry Heath Olson. They sold Ronnie a restaurant on Olson Street in Gratiot, Michigan, in Macomb County. And all of this was done by L. Brooks Patterson's office and the policeman who covered up my kidnap and my twins' murder, and the fact that Camille Sirhan had been kidnapped with my twin and I, and the fact that a governor's family and then the people who gave you the Eagles had raped I and my twin in a basement on Hoover Street. All of this was covered up by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office for 70 years. Those same people are the people who murdered the Kennedy family, my cousins. And that's the people via my second wife who tried to steal the computers that I actually helped interface TV to the DOS system via my father-in-law, Joe Jacobs, who was my first wife's father. Another woman whose family are Cook and Perry, the CEOs of Apple, came into my life and married me. And she absolutely hated Nancy Fredericks, Joe Jacobs' stepdaughter. And Joe Jacobs had given Gates the software to make his first computer at our wedding in the 60s, right, as the Vietnam War was going on. And Joe Jacobs was also my cousin.
So that's the beginning of the Apple Microsoft rivalry.
Yeah, Cook and Perry were cousins to my second wife, and she married me and they spied on me. And I learned that they were spying on me because I helped design a heated backlight for General Motors, and all it was a tester that tested the heated backlight in the back window for your defrosters. You flip the button on your dash and it heats the window and it melts the ice. They needed a way to test that, and I helped a guy named John Shikes at General Motors design that heated backlight for the assembly line so they could make sure the windows worked before they put them in the cars. They'd hook them up to electricity before they mounted them in the cars they went into. And they'd take my tester, which was nothing more than a coil attached to a couple of transistors and a resistor, and it would see if there was a electrical charge running through every part of the heated backlight in the back windshield.
Okay.
And they used that on the GM assembly lines to test the defrosters in the back windows before putting the windshields in and sealing them onto the car as it went down the line. I designed that.
Interesting. Yeah.
With Cronin and a guy named Ronald Rook, and Paul Allen worked with me at that time, and Neil Cronin. And that's when Gates got the software to make his first computer and interface it with DOS. And Gates didn't do this. Gates didn't know anything about electronics. The people who knew about the electronics were the people that worked with me at Christensen.
I see. Okay.
And then Paul Allen, and our boss was from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Gates' partner was from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Wow. I know where this is going. Yeah.
So was the CIA that put an illegal gun and drug trade being run by the Senate on my farm. And he's written,
Mr. Plumlee?
Yeah, Robert Tosh Plumlee is Albuquerque, and so was Jim Mars.
Yeah.
and so is the Baker family.
Yeah, Judith Baker. Yeah.
So, and then the sheriff's wife from Albuquerque, she came and lived with me and my wife just before she was murdered in Tennessee. And all these people seem to know to come to me.
Yeah. Yeah, they do for generations.
Yeah, because I was kidnapped by governors in Michigan. And I was the truth of Kennedy's murder.
Mhm.
I know that Oswald didn't murder Kennedy, and I know that Osborne did.
Yeah.
And I've known these things all my life because L. Brooks Patterson covered these things up. He covered up the fact that Long and Wallace and Andrews and Anderson and Osborne and Hall, Darrell Hall, they all raped me and tortured me and murdered
Yeah.
my twin. And he covered all of this up because he was getting money from the government, like 20, 25 million a year to run the prosecutor's office to find the murderers of children. And he knew who the murderers were all along.
Mhm.
And I don't think this, I know this, Greg, I lived it.
Yeah,
And
like
when
you
I
said,
go-
he saw you.
When
you
I
were
go
in the
back,
case.
when I go back to Michigan and try to file murder charges, they try to put me in jail. They don't make out murder reports about what I tell them. Try to put me in jail. They sell my friends houses on streets named after my murdered wives. And they murder my family's children as I sit in the police station, and they try to put me in jail. And that's what they've done the last 2 times I've gone to L. Brooks Patterson's prosecutor's office. The first time they gave you Dr. Nasser, which is a complete BS story. A doctor's supposed to look at an athlete's private parts and make sure they're okay,
Right.
and okay them performing in the sports. The second time I went back there, they gave the world, who was it? Anderson at MSU. And MSU was one of the college I would perform music at. I performed at MSU and Central, on Tartar Fields at MSU, which is a football field in front of thousands of people. I was performing with Bottom Line there when I was 14 years old. I was performing there with Del Towers, and his brother, George Towers, took my baby pictures and put the Twin Towers on the back of them with Eastman Kodak. And all of this is related to my life and them murdering Kennedy and then blowing up the towers after stealing over $2 trillion from me in Detroit, Michigan. And there's
I
no
mean,
lying.
this is so clear how this is all connected. And I mean, it just,
And
it's
they don't
just
put me on
unbelievable.
any news. And look what I'm telling you.
And I'm thinking about Wright Patterson for a second, because I went and visited the Air Force Base there last week. And the first people that I saw when I went there was Hugh and Baldwin and Ward and all these names. And then, of course, just the name itself, Wright and Patterson. And I'm thinking, you're talking about L. Brooks Patterson. And Wright helped murder one of your wives. And I'm going, oh my gosh, all these names just have been together for generations.
Wright is the family that gave you the Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah.
And my birthday is on the ships. That's the ship's registry number. My birthday is 7453 in the New York Museum. Wright
That's
lived
right.
next door to Timothy Leary, the father of LSD, at Berkeley in California. And my family built Berkeley University. My family also built the Skull and Bones University up in Portland. Where the Ford family went there to become doctors. And my family ran Henry Ford's. I'm the Jackson family. I'm the 20. And this is why Joe Biden appointed Kamala Harris, who is my last name. But Harris, there are no Black people in my family until 10 years ago. My brother,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
One of
even
my
Adam on
brothers,
they had there was. Go
one
ahead.
of my little brother's wives divorced him, and then his daughter married a black man. So there are Harris black people in my family now, but they're too young to be in political office.
Yeah.
And there's never been black people in my family for a simple reason. My family was with President Lincoln as his guest as the Civil War was going on, and Bush shot him. My family didn't own any slaves, and we're 100% European. We're not from Africa, and we're not from Indonesia, like Kamala Harris. And there were no men in my family named Harris other than my grandfather, and he was married to Mrs. Fuller, and his whole family was murdered when my mother was 7, and he only had one son, and his name was Harold, and he died. He was run over by a semi. And then they ran over the rest of the family with a semi in their driveway. My mother's sister's kids when I was about, I don't know, maybe 3 years old. So there were no males in my family named Harris to be Kamala Harris's parents.
Right.
No male Harrises who are in the Smithsonian or who were with Lincoln are named Harris and black from Africa. That's an impossibility because they were all murdered. They were run over by semis. And it's not coincidence that Jimmy Hoffa is my family member. And my family made the Fuller transmissions that went into every semi. All of these things are related in my life. Harris Publishing was Hearst Corporation's competition, and we made the Fuller transmissions, and we were the Fuller Brushman. And my whole family in the Smithsonian were 100% European. There's no black in my family. And people like Albert Pike, whose daughters still live down the street from me here, they're my relatives. They didn't like blacks being brought to America and sold as slaves. They were totally against it.
Right.
They built that up to say we hate blacks, and no, we don't. We didn't like black people like Kamala's family enslaving their own people, putting them on ships and bringing them here and selling them for the kings and queens of Europe.
Right.
That's who the KKK initially was. We didn't hate blacks. We just didn't want them in America. When China took over the KKK, that's when they started killing black people. They were hanging them in town squares, and monks in the Himalayas were running the KKK by that time. And nobody knows these things.
Yeah,
I know
nobody
it.
knows that history. That's for sure.
No, I know these things because I come from the presidents who founded the country. And I've been told the real history. And my wives, they were all murdered as I lived on the Manning Ranch, and all of America got Bradley Manning from Julian Assange and Alex Jones and Jesse Ventura. I mean, and these are the people that stole my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know these things. They stole $2 trillion from me and gave all of the whole world bottom line events, which was my stolen trademark. And then the lawyers who did that for DuPont and McMahon made it the study book for the entire lawyers bar. So every lawyer in the country has studied out of my stolen trademark for over 50 years. And all the Supreme Court justices studied out of my stolen trademark, which was a federal publishing license at ASCAP BMI. And my own family member, Frank Sinatra and Ted Kennedy, made me a publisher with Morton Gould.
Yeah.
Back when they were killing the Kennedy family. And I'm the only person that knows these things. They did all this theft, then they blew up the receipts in the Twin Towers. I had a civil rights case in the Pentagon they blew up. And as they were doing this, John DeLorean was driving to GM in an electric car he built in his garage next door to my home in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And he'd go zooming past me in his electric car. You couldn't even hear it, scare the heck out of us, wave. And he'd go to GM and I'd go teach at Warren Consolidated Electronics. And then I worked for Christensen. And when I divorced my second wife, who was spying on me for Cook and Perry so they could create Apple Computer, they framed John DeLorean for the illegal drugs I stopped on the farm that Trump's tax attorney, Mazar, sold to me. Because Verna's kids were overdosed in my driveway, and I saw the drugs still being sold by a pharmacist who lived in a worker house behind my house on the same farm I got from Mazar, Trump's tax attorney.
Yeah.
I stopped it. Mr. Giles burnt 100 pounds of weed in the field between us. I threw away about $1 million worth of LSD and cocaine off my kitchen table. And I called the FBI in Oakland County and Macomb Police and reported it. And they put me in jail for a year.
Right.
And the drug dealers ran away scot-free. And then they chased the drug dealers into Grenada and murdered 6,000 people in Grenada one afternoon. And then eventually they chased Noriega into the Vatican, where they used my middle name, Francis. That's not the Pope's real name. And Pope John and President Reagan were at my college, Macomb Community College, as they tried to murder the Biondo brothers, who owned the Premier Network trademark. And I worked for them, performing, playing drums and guitar and piano. We left one night and they hit the Biondo brothers over the head with a hammer. And then the whole world got Art Bell a week later, as I played at Alex's Brass Bell in Utica, Michigan, where the town clock is. And there's DeLorean's gull wing car going into the future at the clock tower.
Yeah. Yeah. They even, Hugh, they even made Mayor Hugh of Hughville. Part 3 of that.
I'm well aware of all of this. And Janet Barclay was my secretary, and she introduced me to Tony Tocco, and Miller was my girlfriend, and Miller supposedly killed Hoffa. They found a spot of blood in a house I helped Miller get. And Tocco and Miller, I did the Guardian warranty work at Sears for Tocco and Miller, and I employed Miller. And Carl's Refrigeration in Detroit, and Kraft. I even employed Kraft at my business Shelby Service Center.
Yeah.
As I worked with Tocco and Miller. And they weren't around when Jimmy Hoffa disappeared. And I know this because my own mother-in-law was with Hoffa when he disappeared, and Hoffa's my family member. And the FBI came and detained me for his murder the next morning in front of all my children in Oakland County. I had a house in Troy, a 4 or 5 bedroom home in Troy on Isabel Street. And the Isabella Gardner Museum was robbed, and they tell you it was robbed in the 80s or 90s, and it was robbed in the 70s also. And I'm the Gardner family, and I lived on Isabel Street, and I built my first house there when I was 17 with Westhouse, who I divorced, and she's still alive, and my next 4 wives have been murdered. And there's a reason she's still alive and my next 4 wives are murdered. It's because her family murdered Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I divorced her, because I knew that. She wasn't a part of it. So I don't want anybody going out there and murdering my second wife, Mary, but her family members murdered Hoffa. Her brother was in a biker gangs, and Whitey was a biker who stole me a car, and that's why the FBI came and arrested me for my own family member's murder, because her friend Whitey sold me a car. And now that woman, Mary Westhouse, she was a lot older than me. She was robbing the cradle, and she and her mother both started having sex with me before I was 18. And there's a reason for that. It's because they knew I was kidnapped and raped when I was 4 and my twin murdered. So when my second wife started cheating with a homicide detective behind my back, she showed up, started having sex with me with her mother, and she married me, and she hated my first wife. And she hated my first wife because that's where Microsoft got its start, through Joe Jacobs of IBM. And
Yeah,
her
she's
family,
Apple's.
her
She's Apple's
family
favorite.
is Apple, and they were spying on me. I made that heated backlight I told you about earlier, and instantly I showed it to her mother, and her mother gave it to her friend, and they gave you stud finders all over the country.
Yeah.
Her mother's friend and cousins became millionaires overnight with something I designed for General Motors.
It's pretty interesting that you invented the stud finder, but not the stud finder. They used it to make it, and then got all the credit and all the money.
Yeah, and that all came from a 55-year-old woman who was burying her breasts in front of me, my wife's mother, and asking me for sex all the time. And I told her, no, I'm married to your daughter. I'm not going to have sex with you.
Mhm.
She was a saxophone player from the same school I went to, and she wanted to play saxophone for my band, Bottom Line. So she would try to have sex with me. And my wife doesn't know that. When Mary watches this, she'll deny it, and she doesn't know her mother was doing that.
Right.
I do.
Yeah.
Just like nobody knows I divorced Nancy Jacobs Fredericks. Her real name was Fredericks, but her mother married Joe Jacobs. And prior to that, she was married to the mayor of East Detroit. So my wife was Fredericks of Hollywood. Her father was mayor of East Detroit, and then her father was Joe Jacobs of IBM. That wife was having sex with a homicide detective in Warren, Michigan, when I was 15, married to her. I was married to her because she had raped me in the back seat of her mother cars, Betty Jacobs' car. Nancy Jacob, her daughter, raped me in the back seat of that car. She came to me and asked me for an abortion. I told her, I'm not going to give you money to get an abortion. I'll marry you. I married her. I was 15. She was 21. She raped me.
Yeah.
My own father told me to charge her with rape. I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because she had my daughter, and my daughter's still alive, and I'm happy with that.
Right.
Anderson kidnapped me. Cooper kidnapped and raped my daughter. And the whole world has Anderson Cooper, CNN. They doubled my wife, Nancy Fredericks of Hollywood. And there's no lie in this. I've been watching Anderson Cooper 360 ever since the internet came about, which my family created. And they doubled my wife, and they raped me and raped my daughter, and gave me a journalist with both names. Same as they gave me the journalist Wallace, the journalist Osborne, the journalist Anderson. And all the people that raped me as a child are on radio and TV hiding my truth of who really murdered Kennedy. And Bobby and all the 5 Kennedys were murdered by the very people who raped and tortured me and murdered my twin and kidnapped my twin with Camille Sirhan.
Yeah.
There's no lie in this. There's no lie in this. Tom Garrett at CVS destroyed my income as he gave the world Manning, and they murdered 2 of my wives on the Manning Civil War Ranch in Tennessee.
Right.
That I rented from Woody, who was Toy Story with Disney. I was publishing Disney's music.
Yeah.
And I worked with Amber in a lounge. Her boyfriend was the lounge owner who gave you mug root beer and Tim's potato chips. Amber was his girlfriend and gave you Amber Alerts. And then you had Depp working for Disney, and he just destroyed Amber Heard to further hide my story with Chelsea Manning. And none
And
of
you were
this
talking
is a lie.
about Tim Allen too.
And
Tim
they
Allen
gave
is
you-
on Toy Story.
I
so we're talking
stopped
about
a
Allen.
gun and drug trade run by Tom Hank. Tom and Hank ran the drug trade on the farm I got from Mazar's tax attorney. They let Tom and Hank go and they put me in jail for a year. And you got Tom Hanks. And you also got Vern, hey Vern, the comedian. And none of this is a lie. And you got Bucky Larson, born to be a star. Bucky Larson, Tom, and Hank were the drug dealers I stopped on the farm I bought from Trump's tax attorney in New York. The farm was in Utica, Michigan, and they wanted it there because they were selling the drugs to the auto companies that I was designing tools for. You understand this, Greg? Is that real?
Oh yeah, no, I really do understand it.
And you can hear what I'm saying.
Yeah, oh, I put all the pieces together a long
So
time ago.
when they,
so-
and Jesse Ventura, who stole my trademark Bottom Line for their Bottom Line events with Austin and McMahon and DuPont. Remember, DuPont created the Wrestlers and shot 5 of them on his farm. And then remember, Jackie Kennedy was riding one of DuPont's horses when she died after falling off the horse.
Yeah,
Just like Superman Chris Reeves.
fell off a horse, right?
Now, I know the Reeves family, Jackie Onassis, her family would come to all my performances. And she, when I was raped and my twin was murdered, she ran to Onassis when they murdered her husband, Kennedy. None of this is coincidence. All of this is hiding me. And then the sheriff's wife from Albuquerque came to the Manning Ranch and wanted to be my girlfriend while I was married to Victoria, my wife. She tried to go to bed with me and Victoria. I threw her out of my house. And she was a porno star from the sheriff in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Albuquerque, New Mexico is the lie of Robert Tosh Plumlee, who said he was flying the drugs from Cuba. And no, he wasn't. The drugs come from Mexico. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And he said he met Oswald in Cuba. No, he didn't. And if he was flying drugs, he was flying them from Mexico, not from Cuba. And all of this is a CIA cover-up of 5 governors' families who kidnapped me at 4 on the day they murdered Admiral Byrd. They don't want you to know the truth. And all of these people have been running the media, the FBI, and the White House and Senate, selling drugs to Americans and guns to Mexican cartels ever since they murdered Kennedy. And I'm the guy that knows this, and they don't scare me. You know, they don't scare me, Greg. I was dead 3 times by these people, 3 times before I was 17. They stole my trademark Bottom Line, and they had Bruce Springsteen sing to you about Dr. Pasternak, and Dr. Pasternak attempted to murder me in Oakland County. He sings Pasternak, Joe Namath in his song, right in the Bottom Line bar, which is my stolen trademark in New York. As Dr. Pasternak attempted to murder me with 3 pills, and he wasn't my doctor. My second wife looked around and found him because I asked her to find me a doctor, but he had never been my doctor. The first thing he did is hand me 3 pills, and any 2 pills together will kill you. I ended up in a hospital, nearly dead. They brought me back to life in Royal Oak, Beaumont. And then Royal Oak, Beaumont lost my records about Dr. Pasternak. And the Oakland County Police Station lost my murder report. I tried to get them both back. I tried to get the murder report from Oakland County and Warren, where my wife was screwing the homicide detective. I tried to get it back from Oakland County, where I made out a report, and I tried to get them back from the hospital. And my own murder report disappeared in 2 police stations in the hospital that brought me back to life. And that's why I divorced that wife, because her father buried Jimmy Hoffa.
Did
And I
that
don't-
same hospital give you an injection that made you lose your hair decades later?
Yeah, Troy Beaumont did that. They gave me a shot of radiation that wasn't mine, made all my hair and my teeth fall out. And it fried my insides for over a month. Yeah, they almost killed me. They tried to kill me. And then they told me that never happened before. They didn't know why it happened. They murdered my doctor there that night at Robin Williams' home. Do you understand this, Greg?
Not in his home in California, his previous home in Michigan. You
In
mean?
Michigan, in Birmingham, Michigan. This is a long time before he lived in California. When he lived in Birmingham, they gave me the shot of radiation. He was still Mork and Mindy. He was probably traveling to AA to make Mork and Mindy, but he still had a home in Birmingham.
Okay.
They murdered my doctor right there next door to him after giving me a shot of radiation.
Which explains why you had just gone past his house. when
Pam
they killed him.
Williams was my girlfriend at Warren High, and
Okay.
Robin Williams is my father's cousin.
Right. And so this explains why they would have had the motivation to murder him when you went by his house.
Yeah,
Right
it was
after you-
convenient for them.
Yeah, in California.
And Jim Mars was looking into my stolen trademark Bottom Line. I gave him my IRS licenses for Bottom Line New York. He started looking into it. He ended up dead as I went to Rand Paul's house, and his neighbor sucker punched him, an anesthesiologist. Then I couldn't wake up for a month, ended up in a hospital in Indiana.
Yeah.
At Squire Boone. When I woke up, Jim Mars was dead.
Yeah.
And he'd been looking into my stolen trademark. And gee, Jim Mars is Judith Baker's friend too, isn't he?
Sure is. Right there in Albuquerque.
It's real interesting, my
Yeah.
life.
Yes, it is.
All of these people, the sheriff's wife, the sheriff made her a porno star, and then she was sent to me and my wife to try and have sex with us after Terry was murdered. And Terry was Terry Heath, as in Sarah Heath Palin. Not coincident.
Right.
Terry was hung in her dog's leash after she told me 2 people were stalking her, and 2 off-duty policemen had already kidnapped her out of her Wisconsin CPS office. That's why I flew her to the Manning Ranch in Tennessee to protect her from off-duty policemen attempting to murder her.
Right. At the same time, Palin's running for vice president. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And Clinton, the Fuller family was murdered on Clinton River Road.
Yeah.
Not by 1 semi, not by 2 semis, by 3 semis. Leaving church and in their driveways. You understand this, Greg?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
this was before I was born.
Yeah.
And then you get the Clintons. After Reagan was shot leaving my university, Reagan shook my hand, left, and he was shot. Pope came and talked right to me, left, and was shot. And the world got Nick Pope. And then Kennedy's driver was Greer, and Greer's big on aliens, and they hide me at S4. I'm Squire. I was kidnapped at 4, tortured, and they murdered my twin. So Greer with the aliens has been hiding me behind UFOs and aliens at Area 51, which my family built. Area 51 and S4. So they're hiding me in the institutions that my own family built years prior for 70 years now. as they murdered my family. They've murdered my entire family, including kids, 5 times. And then they sell people I published restaurants on streets named after my wives who were murdered. And there's no lie in this. And the government's doing it. People like Major Tom Garrett at CBS. And CBS, you know, Barbara Walters and Walter Cronkite covered the Kennedy murder.
Yeah.
And Walter's phone was used to scream Slater, who's the Attorney General of Tennessee and a judge in Troy, Michigan, where they let a killer out of jail to murder my wife, Victoria. They used the Walters phone, who was my wife's advocate in the hospital, to scream Slater over the phone in a heavy metal voice as they cut my wife's ear off. Mm-hmm. They called me right from her bedroom as they cut her ear off. That's torture. And this is the second time they murdered her, and they murdered her the second time on Halloween Eve.
Right.
And it was covered up by her own advocate. And the person who filed the murder report said it was natural causes, but she was missing her ears. How do you miss your ears in a hospital without an operation, and you're sodomized getting blood transfusions for a month because you went into the hospital because you choked on a drop of water?
Right.
I revived her, took her to the hospital, and they murdered her a second time. And they laughed at me the whole time they were torturing her. They kept her sedated after sodomizing her. Wouldn't let her wake up. She woke up once, and the only thing she said to me is, "Hugh, somebody's trying to hurt me." And I looked at her and I said, "Yeah, I know." I'd already told the police in 2 cities, and she had a state policeman from Senator Graham's state watching over her. And he looked the other way as they cut her ear off, called me on the phone in a heavy metal voice and screamed Slater. And then he tried to blame me for my wife's murder. I was 100 miles away, and I already saved her one time and flew her to the hospital she was in when he helped murder her. Then Tom Garrett at CBS destroyed my income. The only income I had left the day after they murdered my attorney, who was on his way to the district attorney in Tennessee in Johnson City to file murder charges. They murdered my attorney, destroyed my income, so I couldn't hire another attorney. So it took me 5 years to file a murder case. And then the police in one city told me it's not his fault, the government's corrupt, and didn't open a murder case where she was murdered the first time in Greenville, Tennessee. And the sheriff in Mossheim, a black sheriff, told me he's going to leave the murder up to God. Isn't that interesting? And both of those sheriffs did illegal things. My wife was murdered in Greenville, and then she was murdered a second time in Johnson City. And both sheriffs looked the other way and didn't report the murder. As my attorney was murdered, and my income, my only income, was destroyed by Tom Garrett of CBS, as Barbara Walters' family handed their phone to whoever murdered my wife so they could scream in my ear and let me know they cut her ear off in a hospital room in Johnson City. And gee, Johnson City, that was Kennedy's vice president, wasn't it? It's also the Continental Divide.
Yeah, and then they took him to Parkland, and then they had a shooting at Parkland school there, or Parkland, Florida. School in Parkland, Florida, where
now,
you
Sandy Locke was my girlfriend. And I told Alex Jones when he was reporting that bullshit, I told him they really murdered kids. They're just making fun of me and my girlfriend, Sandy Locke. They called her
They
called her a hooker. They called her a hooker. And the government really killed kids. And that's how they operate in my life for 70 years. They murdered all those kids in Oakland County. They tell you they murdered 4. But my twin was murdered by the same people in 57. And Terry was kidnapped by two police because she was protecting two kids on the Great Lakes on the Wisconsin side from the porno industry, who was the same people that kidnapped me in 57 on the day they murdered Admiral Byrd. And they keep telling the whole world that there was 4 kids murdered. Well, one of those kids was my family member, Timmy King. President Ford's real name is King. They dumped his body on my family street. And I'm well aware of what they did. They used a gremlin to kill these 4 kids. And my little brother owned a gremlin and played in my band Bottom Line that they stole and handed to the entire lawyer's bar to study out of to pass the bar exam. And I watched them murder these kids and shoot President Ford as they did it. And gee, who shot at President Ford? Charles Manson. As you got Patty Hearst, my family's competition, the Hearst Corporation. I was Harris Publishing. You had Hearst Publishing, our competition worldwide. Charles Manson, he wanted to be a musician. I'm a publisher. Real interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Obama and Michelle were in the entertainment lawyer industry. They gave up their lawyer's degree before they became president and first lady. And Kamala Harris, her husband's in the entertainment profession, an entertainment lawyer, and they know they stole my trademark and $2 trillion from me. They know these things. And they're pretending to be my family. I'm the Jackson family. I'm the Harris family. So they murdered 4 of my wives, and now they pretend they're my family, and they're not. And they're all entertainment lawyers. Very interesting. Mm-hmm. And entertainment lawyers stole my trademark, murdered me via Dr. Pasternak and Dr. Myers. They murdered me 2 times before I was 17 as they stole my trademark, Bottom Line. I got my trademark through Weiner and Associates on Telegraph Road in front of Dire Straits' house. And gee, what did Dire Straits sing to you? Look at that monkey. Look at that yo-yo. They murdered the Duncan kids next door to me, 5 Duncan kids. Johnson called my home on the day he took office.
Does that have anything to do with the monkeypox?
Yes, it does. Oh, they gave you Dora the Explorer, Hanna-Barbera, Dora the Explorer with a blue monkey on their back.
Yeah.
And the monkeys sing my name, Squire.
Right.
The local squires out cutting the lawn. And that's what I did. I cut lawns for a business as I did my paper route to feed my little brothers and sisters and buy my parents the house they lived in.
Right.
In Sterling Heights.
It goes great with this movie, 12 Monkeys, too, talking about different diseases and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real clear.
I think it's funny Joe Biden has coronavirus again, and he's had all the booster shots and he's on antivirals, and there he's got coronavirus all over again.
He's awfully scared of monkeypox. I wonder if why he's so afraid he might have that.
He knew about it before anybody in the country, didn't he?
Sure did.
They're passing it out. It comes from Africa. I mean, who did he work for? Obama?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Obama was groomed by the Queen of England. She's my cousin. And nobody knows these things. And then when I say the truth, they call me a liar because they didn't hear it on the fake media.
Right.
That's run by the very people that kidnapped me on the day they murdered Admiral Byrd and murdered my twin. And
so Pfizer wants to sell these vaccines, right? So they're coming up with something that might affect.
Well, on the day they raped me, Greg, they gave the world Preparation H for hemorrhoids. And I was being raped by 5 gay governors.
Right.
It's not coincidence.
Yeah, the wise person can see how this goes together.
Eastman Kodak took my baby pictures and put Twin Towers on them 30 years before the Twin Towers existed. On 9/11, 1953. That's 47 years before the Twin Towers were blown up.
See your W-53 bomb there?
Yeah, Eastman Kodak did that. And Eastman Kodak told Trump to steal the White House.
Mhm.
Eastman Kodak lived next door to my ranch in Tennessee where they murdered my wives. Trump's tax attorney sold me the illegal gun and drug trade farm in Utica, Michigan. They were selling illegal drugs to the auto companies, Ford's, Chevy, Chrysler. I stopped it. They
Yeah.
put me in jail, gave the world to drug dealers in Hollywood movies because the Senate runs Hollywood. And they promised every Ukrainian that they could be movie stars so they can steal the lithium there.
Yeah.
After May Musk had my wife murdered Christmas Day and gave the world Elon Musk, a male sound, and I'm the L. I'm bottom line. I'm the L.
Sounds like a pretty
Elon Musk
homosexual theme
as,
there.
as 5 gay governors stuck
Yeah.
their penises in my rectum. And
Mhm.
Pfizer gave the world Preparation H, and Eastman took my baby pictures and put the Twin Towers on them on 9/11, 1953, as they murdered Admiral Byrd. This is the truth of our country now.
Yeah.
They took and framed John DeLorean for the drugs I stopped while I was in jail. Remember? You posted the magazine in Time, and they even put my trademark, stolen trademark, bottom line next to John DeLorean. Remember?
Mhm.
And then his electric car didn't exist. DeLorean Motor Company didn't exist. They put him in jail for selling drugs he never sold.
Right.
I stopped them. They put me in jail,
Mhm.
kidnapped my daughter, Cooper. And then you got Elon Musk, a mail sent with John DeLorean's electric car patent. Isn't that interesting?
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
now he's protecting Ukraine because that's where all the lithium he can get his hands on is. And his batteries are made in the countries that are making deals with Ukraine for the lithium.
Right.
Real interesting. He's your hero. Your hero's from German South America, right? South Africa, right? That's
got
your
it.
hero. What's that behind you? That plane, is that the plane that crashed into the Twin Towers?
Now, seeing that interesting, it's got a 77 on it, like Flight 77 that went into the Pentagon. And this is the airplane, the boxcar that dropped the bomb on Nagasaki.
Oh, cool. My uncle cleaned up Nagasaki and Hiroshima for George Patton.
Yeah.
He was in his tank division over in Europe. And then they shipped him to Hiroshima and Nagasaki to clean up the radiation.
Yeah. Yeah. Now,
And
see,
he-
there's
and
your.
Captain Lewis fitted the Enola Gay
Mhm.
with a bomb. And now they tell you in the news that Enola is a woman, not a gay man, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
After
It just
5,
happened to drop a little boy.
yeah, oh, and it's W-53, my birthday.
Yeah. W-53
Interesting.
bomb is not, that's not the bomb that they dropped there,
Oh,
but that's another.
MK-53, MK Ultra, like my family member,
Uh-huh.
Admiral Byrd. Oh, gee. And it was an ICBM. Oh, Joe Jacobs worked there. Oh, real interesting how they hide me, isn't it, Greg?
Yeah. Here's
Right
your
out in
bottom
the-
line busted.
Oh, gee, you found it. Yeah, show that
Uh-huh.
again.
Yeah, there it is. John DeLorean, bottom line, busted.
Yeah,
Time magazine.
Elon Musk's mother did that. Took over the magazine as they murdered Ricky Nelson's cousin from Missouri who was going to marry me. They chained her to a tree, kicked her teeth out, raped her. Then they murdered her Christmas Day a few years later when they didn't murder her after raping her. And that was on Belle Isle. And gee, guess who she was with, Greg? When she was chained to a tree and raped. Guess who she was with?
Wasn't it Sylvester Stallone's wife?
Oh,
I think?
yeah. And Sylvester Stallone's from Ukraine, isn't he?
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, gee. Yeah, she was with Sylvester Stallone's wife
Yeah.
on Belle Isle in Detroit, Michigan, and 5 black guys chained her to a tree, brutally raped her, left her for dead. She didn't die. And then my own brother raped her in front of our kids, so we didn't get married. And then they murdered her Christmas Day.
Check this out, Hugh.
But I don't exist and I'm not newsworthy, Greg.
No. But look right here at Wright Patterson. Look at this. Major O. Squire, Brigadier General James Allen. There, you were talking about Allen.
Oh,
This is the first display. This is the very first thing I came across at Wright Patterson.
And George was the first husband of my wife whose family murdered Hoffa. There's no lie in this. Mrs. Wright wanted to be my girlfriend. So she set my wife up on 3D IMView chat, and they planned her murder in Connecticut. A bunch of bikers in a bar did this.
Right.
And
so Wright and Patterson did this together here, right?
And the bikers are my second wife's friends who would meet on her father's farm in New Haven, Michigan, where he buried Jimmy Hoffa. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And all of this is in your book, right? You put it all in the book, right?
Yeah. This is the Wright family did this. This is the same Wright family that invented the airplane. I mean, this is unreal.
Yeah, they invented the Wright plane, and they married a woman. Her real name isn't Wright, but she was cheating on her husband, Bill Wright, who gave you the Philadelphia experiment. And then Swerdlow says he's MK Ultra, and he shows you a machine I built when I ran Acme Cleveland. And the ship's registry numbers are my birthday in the New York Museum on the Great Lakes.
Yeah, I know, 7453.
And Kennedy and my family and my murdered wives, they all were together in World War II in the Navy as the experiment of the Philadelphia experiment happened, and my family ran the experiment. But George Swerdlow, the Russian, he was used by Admiral Byrd at MK Ultra. And Eisenhower murdered Byrd and told the whole country he was afraid of a military industrial complex. As 5 governors raped me and stole $2 trillion. And
yeah, here's all your names out of that complex.
A trademark and 4 patents they stole from me. Yeah, and Eisenhower, when I went to coast and tried to tell my truth to Kennedy.
There was Eisenhower.
There's Laura Eisenhower stealing my whole story.
Yeah.
She'd been watching me, just like the sheriff's wife, who was a porno star, was watching me as they murdered Terry Heath from Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was watching me all the way from Albuquerque, New Mexico, with Robert Tosh Plumlee, the CIA agent running the illegal guns out of Mexico. And it's Mexico he was running the drugs from, because that's where his partner, Kiki Camarino, died. But he writes a book and says it was Cuba. With Oswald, and they were going to kill Kennedy.
So what's this got to do with today's news about?
This is all CIA cover-ups, Greg, from the clowns union that stole my trademark with DuPont.
Yeah. Now, you wrote in your post today about Biden trading a arms dealer for a drug dealer.
Yeah, he's trading a Russian arms dealer operating in the United States, probably with the Senate, for the drug dealing basketball player. Well, I don't know her name. A black girl with hash oil, and she knew hash was illegal in Russia. And she lies to their court and says she put it in her suitcase by accident.
Right.
Who puts drugs in their suitcases for a flight by accident, Greg?
Right.
So Biden is offering a Russian arms dealer operating in probably New York or California for a drug dealer.
Right.
That guy's so stupid, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
And
that's who they are. It's all about drugs
Joe
and
Biden, when you hear this,
arms.
I have a right to call you stupid because you are. And you're stealing all my family names with black women and Mexicans.
Mhm.
And there's no replacement theory. It really happened after you and Obama murdered two of my wives on the Manning Ranch and gave the world a gay soldier named Chelsea.
Yeah.
You and Garrett at CBS did that, Biden, with Kamala Harris. Oh, a prosecutor in California where they stole my trademark, bottom line, to study
Yeah.
out of a lawyer's bar. Oh, gee, even Kamala studied out of my stolen trademark. And her husband. And now you're stealing my family names as you take down the statues to the people in my family who created the country, wrote the Declaration of Independence, Mr. Biden. I have a right to call you stupid because you are.
Definitely.
You don't even know you're a white man.
Right.
And I'm not going to shoot you. That's not who I am. I don't stoop to your level, idiot.
Right.
Understand that, Greg?
Uh-huh.
Was that real clear?
That's pretty clear.
Put it
Yeah.
up on YouTube. Let them hear it. It's
That's
true.
right.
It's true.
Well, while he threatens you through some guy named Joe that he keeps sending.
Yeah, Joe's going to kill me. Joe from Harris, New York, on the Hudson River is going to kill me. Big.
Look at this. Look at this, Hugh. I'm only going to leave that up for a second because I don't want to get flagged.
Oh,
But that's
Daryl Hall.
And John Oates. And you know that character's name?
Yeah, the guy that raped me in Osborne's basement.
But get his name. His name. The character's name is Huey, and he's wearing Daryl Hall, and that's from The Boys, a show on.
Yeah, and that's in Royal Oak where he gave you Joe Walsh, and Joe Walsh was the parish priest at my church, St. Anne's.
Gee, I think they know who you are.
Yeah, I think so. I sobered Joe Walsh up with Alice a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went to Daryl Hall and went on TV with the Eagles. You know, this is my life is such BS from the government. It's pathetic. And they can take me to court. They can kill me again, but these videos will last forever. And so will my posts. You have copies of them, and you know I got federal documents that even show I had a civil rights case. I had a civil rights case against the Groves family in the Pentagon on 9/11. They blew my civil rights case up as they blew the receipts up to Bottom Line, New York, a worldwide business in the Twin Towers. I still have my copies.
Yeah.
And I'm a real publisher, Greg.
Yeah. Groves was part of that Philadelphia experiment too, I read.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, the
some role
Voss
playing it.
family is with Trump now in Wisconsin, where they murdered Terry Heath. Two off-duty cops kidnapped Terry out of her CPS office in Wisconsin. And the Voss family supposedly trained the Muslims to blow up the Twin Towers, which is a lie, because the Voss families were my friends in the Keys. And I was online with the Voss family and Ronnie Carmo from Iraq, publishing Ronnie Carmo with Henry Ford's family, Brian Ford, as 9/11 happened. And Bush said that Ford and Carmo paid the Muslims, paid Voss to train the Muslims to fly the planes into the Twin Towers with my worldwide receipts to Bottom Line, my stolen trademark. And they blew up the Pentagon with my civil rights case. It was in that office. I still have my copy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything I'm saying is truth, Greg.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of gays in Indiana were running the 9/11 truther site and didn't tell my truth. And when I left, they had been taking donations. They bought themselves a house, but they told me I didn't get any donations to report murders of children. So nobody in the country sent them a donation to help me protect little children. And they're gays. They're gay people. Buttigieg's friend. Oh, and my twin was murdered, but Buttigieg has two little boys he adopted.
Uh-huh.
Gee.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of things they put me through at Squire Boone.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel Boone Clint Walker was introduced to me, baby Huey and little Herbie on the Volkswagen car. That's me. And I was publishing Disney's music at the Methodist Church with Disney
Right.
as 9/11 happened.
Yeah. And you were introduced to Clint
But I
Walker,
don't
who played
exist.
Daniel Boone.
I don't exist, Greg, and I'm not newsworthy. And
Yeah.
Jimmy Hoffa's my family member.
Yeah. As Oswald's
And-
killed, you're introduced to
And
Clint
Whitey
Walker.
sold me a car, and I'm not mentioned in any
Yeah.
book or movie. And I asked George Knapp at Coast to Coast to write about my murdered wives. Frank Sinatra is my family member in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I'm living with a family who runs a casino in Vegas. And he told me he couldn't write about my murdered wives because it didn't have anything to do with Vegas. And then he gave George Norrie at Coast to Coast a book that's a lie about Hoffa being buried in New Jersey. As he lied to me and the Indian family I live with. I have witnesses to this, George Knapp. So come on, take me to court. I have witnesses. They heard the whole conversation when you lied to me and you couldn't write about my murdered wives. Frank Sinatra is my family member, and Ava Gardner and Mickey Rooney. And my cousin Bugsy Siegel, he created the casinos in Vegas.
Yeah. Yep.
But you couldn't write about my murdered wives, could you? So
Right.
come on, take me, the owner of Bottom Line, the real Bottom Line, to court.
But they were sure scared enough of you that on
Nobody takes me
2017
to
to
court.
shoot up Las
Nobody
Vegas.
puts me on the news. Nobody takes me to court, Greg, because I'm truth.
I know. I know.
And the people who run the news media, murdered my family 5 times.
Mhm.
They murdered the Kennedy family 5 times, murdered my wives 4 times, my grandparents once, my aunts and uncles once, my kids. You murdered my kids and then you buried me in all media. And then you give me Joe Biden stealing my names, pretending to be my family.
Yeah.
Do I look black to you, Greg? Do you see black in me?
No.
I feel black, and I'm definitely not free. And Thomas Jefferson's my ancestor. He wrote the Declaration. Jackson on your 20, he's my ancestor. Lincoln's my cousin. Chase is my cousin. Morgan's my cousin. You have Stanley Morgan, Morgan Stanley. Oh, Stanley's my brother. Morgan came to all my performances back in the 60s. Back when they murdered my cousin who was a diplomat in Brazil, they ate him and his family. Cannibals ate him back in the 60s when I played at Madison Heights with Gene, who gave me a job on a milk truck when I was 3 years old. I bought my family food working on a milk truck for Gene, who built Club Terrell, which became Sherry's, and Sherry Waldo was murdered right next door to me after the day after they murdered Robin Williams. And then they renamed the Waldo Bridge the Robin Williams Bridge, but I'm not newsworthy.
Right.
And Scientology likes to hide me, don't they?
Yeah, since they couldn't recruit you.
With people like Epstein. And what was that girl's name? Janet Barclay dated me. She was 17 years older than me. Her father was Maxwell. The wife I divorced her husband was George. I'm H. You got GH is Lane, Maxwell from Epstein at Welcome Back Cotter. And Mary Pat Cotter was my girlfriend in high school. Interesting, isn't it? But I'm not.
And as you dated her, they gave you max headroom. in
Yeah,
the 80s.
yeah. That was Janet Barclay's father.
Yeah.
And I
It's
worked
unbelievable how
I worked for Mr. Barclay at an airport where they murdered me, stole my car, and then stole an airplane so they
Right.
could pick up drugs. The very bikers who murdered Hoffa for Westhouse and Osborne. You want to end it there? Did I talk about DeLorean enough? and Elon Musk stealing DeLorean's electric car patent.
It's clear to anybody that wants to ask enough questions to put it
Greg, you
together,
know
'cause
me
there's a
well
lot of
enough.
tangents there.
Greg,
I
you
know.
know me well enough to know that I can build a car that will never need a battery, never need gas. It needs 1 quart of oil. And after you drive it to work, you can bring it home and it will power your house until you drive to work again. And you know I can do this, don't you?
Well, if anybody could do it, you could, Hugh.
I can do it. And I built tools for the big 3 automakers from the time I was 14 years old. And I trained the Abrams tank plant in electronics and science. And there's no lie in this. And I can build a car that will power your house and never needs a battery or gas. And they stole all my trademarks and all my money. And then they murdered John DeLorean's car company and then murdered him.
So this is why Musk is trying to replicate this.
Yeah, oh, he's helping Ukraine because they got 5% of the world's lithium, and the people that make his batteries are making the deals with Ukraine to purchase the lithium. It's something like $100 billion. So he gives them a $500 million of satellites. Gee, that puts them right in the running for the lithium, doesn't it?
It's no wonder the Democrats are trying to defend Ukraine, because half the lithium that they're trying to push on
Yeah,
the world in the electric
I'm
cars
not,
are there.
I'm not newsworthy, Greg.
Right.
And
Right.
every word, every word I say is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is my full moon video.
It's a good one.
The
It's a
one
lot
we
of
forgot to
information.
post, but we forgot to post it. I forgot to post it on purpose. And you see the moon going up. I also worked for James Webb. He didn't give me a paycheck for 3 months. Remember that, Greg?
Well, sure, but
Yeah,
why did you mention
worked-
that at the end there?
because the James Webb, that's the greatest thing to hit the.
Oh, the Webb telescope. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, gee, I worked for Webb, and he didn't
Right,
give me a paycheck. So I quit. And you know who sued him and got my money back for me?
No.
Baldwin. No lie in this. Baldwin sued Webb and got my money back for him. And my uncle Flayton and his wife Brooks, that's L. Brooks Patterson's family, they put Armstrong and the astronauts on the moon at NASA while I built the rocket.
Yeah.
at
So now they
Christensen.
hide Flayton, and then they invented a
We
flat
built
Earth.
the Hubble at Christensen,
It's
Greg.
unreal.
We
Yeah.
built the Hubble at Christensen
Yes. Yes. Yes.
when I was building the Guidestones for Christensen and the chief
Electronics for it then.
and the monitor with Neil Cronin for Paul Allen and Gates.
Mhm.
We did all that at Christensen Corporation. Then Webb gave me a job after the Hubble was obsolete, and he didn't give me a paycheck. I ended up in jail because I took a sandwich from a business I delivered to because I was starving to death because he didn't give me a paycheck for a couple months. And I was driving a semi for him across the country, Mr. Webb. This is all truth, Greg.
Yeah.
But I'm never newsworthy. And they murdered Kiki back then, as they didn't give me a paycheck. Christmas Day, they murdered her.
Yeah.
Right there in Troy, Michigan, too. Oakland County, where they murder all the kids. They murdered her daughter there, too, Serena,
Yeah.
when I was sitting in L. Brooks Patterson's office. And they sold Ronnie Carmo, the guy they blamed who owned the fast forward video stores, for paying the Voss family, who is now Trump's backer in Wisconsin, the Voss family.
Yeah. That was on the news this week too. Yeah.
Same name, two different Republican presidents.
Yeah.
Voss in Florida in the Keys, and Voss in Wisconsin, where they murdered my wife, protecting little kids from a porno industry of all things.
Yeah. Where they kidnapped.
And
your
there's
brother.
Epstein with Trump and Clinton. And Clinton, Obama, and Biden murdered my wives on the Manning Civil War Ranch in Tennessee. Not once. Terry was murdered twice. Victoria was murdered twice. I found them dead. I'm a nurse. I revived them.
Mhm.
Flew them to hospitals and they were murdered. They were both murdered a second time on a holiday, Halloween, and my birthday, July 4th.
Yeah.
Really think about this, but I'm not newsworthy, Greg, and they didn't even get an obituary. It was natural causes and they were missing body parts and sodomized. Very interesting, isn't it?
And the guy that runs the paper is named Alex Jones. What are the chances?
Yeah, Alex Jones owned
Right.
the newspaper there.
Right. What are the
Very-
chances?
There, oh gee, I don't know. I don't
Total
know.
coincidence, no doubt.
Oh, well, Julian Assange, you know, he's a pedo from Sweden.
Right.
And gee, the Kennedys, they loved to party in Sweden in the summer when they weren't in college.
Mhm.
That was their family's summer home,
Mhm.
Switzerland. You take care, Greg. Let's end it there. Put this up on YouTube and then post it on my timeline and in that group you made for me, Bow and Arrow.
Mhm.
And you finished my biography a month ago, didn't you?
Good part of it. Yeah.
And
most
it
of
was stolen from you twice. On the
Yeah.
day you finished it, they stole it from you twice, didn't they?
Mhm. I'm still wondering about the second time. Maybe I'll find it.
You won't. They took it. The CIA took it.
They may have.
Osborne at the FBI had somebody watching you and they pickpocketed you, Greg. They took your book. I can tell by the news. Everything that's in the book that's truth, they're trying to counter and they're changing things in the news.
They
data.
definitely stole the computer I sent to you.
I'm
no
watching
doubt
them
about
do
that.
it, Greg. I'm watching them do it, Greg.
Oh, I know. I see the stories and I see that they're countering what we wrote about that nobody else would know about. Yeah, I know. It's obvious.
It'll be kind of hard for them to counter John DeLorean at my stolen trademark busted
Yeah.
as May Musk took over his electric car and my trademark and murdered my wife Christmas Day. He's from South Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. Musk.
Oh, that figures, doesn't it? That's Germans down there, isn't it?
Yeah. Like
And
Bush
my whole
does.
family fought Germany on this side of the ocean.
Right.
Oh, gee, I wonder why he's there. Oh, and he went to school with my family, Harris, right?
Mhm.
That's real interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And he knew right where to come to steal his electric car.
Yep.
My house. Everybody in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Gates, Paul Allen, Cronin, Baker, Robert Tosh Plumlee, Jim Mars, they all know to come to my house.
I think it's great that Putin's attacking Ukraine because I think he's helping you by attacking Ukraine.
Well, yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Elon Musk isn't my friend or my hero.
Right.
And
right.
his car,
He's disrupting the whole.
as soon as I build a car that will power your house, Greg, his car won't exist anymore. I can bankrupt him tomorrow if I want to.
Yeah.
I wonder if he knows that. He does now. Because I know he watches everything I do. Because his very name is making fun of 5 governors in Michigan raping and murdering my 4-year-old twin. That's where his name comes from.
I know. Elon Musk. I get it.
Yeah. And Musk was Gardner's friend.
Mhm.
And Gardner had more money than Musk.
And the L meaning line, bottom line.
Yeah. Well, say that again, Greg.
The L, that's L on. That's
Yeah.
L is
Johnny Cash walked the line. I was the line. And he walked me as they walked Oswald into Ruby's gun. And I rented Ruby's trademark, the Carousel, for my business
right.
in Michigan with Janet
Right.
Barclay. There's no lie in this. Anybody at the FBI, if they take the time to look into everything I'm saying, they got to know it's truth.
Oh, Hugh,
They
I have to go.
They
I'm gonna
have the
to get
records,
off here.
Greg. The FBI has the records, but they never admit I exist.
Okay. Yep. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.